The province of La Pampa in Argentina is located in the middle of the country, and much of the province falls in an area known as Las Pampas. Las Pampas are vast grasslands that extend 460,000 square miles throughout South America. The area is sparsely populated and heavily used by farmers and ranchers. In May 1950, an Argentinian businessman driving through the area would spot something he would never forget. In this episode, we will examine the case of Enrico Bossa and his encounter with a crashed UFO. Unlike other UFO crashes, this case is unique in that the extraterrestrials, not the government, appeared to cover up the wreckage. On May 15, 1950, 46-year-old Argentinian businessman Enrico Bossa was driving through the desolate grasslands of Las Pampas when suddenly he would see something strange up ahead. Around 300 meters ahead, Bossa, who was driving alone, spotted a silver object up ahead on the ground. As he got closer, a confused Bossa would drive slower and stop right where the object was. He spent a few minutes looking at it from inside his car. There was no one around it, and he wondered if it was a crashed airplane, but it looked like nothing he had ever seen before. The craft was oval-shaped, but had a dome that was transparent. It was silver and very shiny. Enrico noticed the sun was reflecting off it. He decided to step out of his vehicle and investigate. As he got closer, he made out more details. It was around 30 feet in diameter and 12 feet tall. The bottom was oval-shaped like an inverted saucer, and the top was shaped like a cylinder. On top of the cylinder, there was a small, dome-like structure. There were several portholes, or circular windows, similar to what ships have. The craft had crashed on an incline of about 20 degrees. Enrico spotted a door and decided to crawl up the hill and investigate. Enrico stuck his head in the craft, and it was very dim and smelled odd, like garlic. He decided to head in. The floor was only about 2 feet down from where the hatch was. As he hopped in, the floor shook, and Enrico believed he weighed too much for it. He glanced around the craft, and it was dark. After several minutes, Enrico's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and he was able to make out more details around the craft. The inside of the craft was around 10 feet in diameter, and he saw portholes covered by some type of translucent material. Then Enrico spotted something frightening in the middle. There, someone or something was deceased. The being was around 3 to 4 feet tall, but oddly enough, seemed to strongly resemble a human. It wore a silver jumpsuit and had a round head which was resting downward on its chest. The face looked human though, similar to a teenage boy with a nose, mouth, and no facial hair. It had light brown skin and large eyes. The being was still tightly gripping the handles, presumably the controls to the ship, which came out of the black box. The chair it sat in was red, and next to the black box there appeared to be a disc, which resembled a TV not turned on. What Enrico saw next would truly frighten him though. On the sides of the craft, there were 2 low-lying sofas against the walls. On each one there was a being, identical in appearance to the first entity. Both were deceased, and terrifyingly, they had died with their mouths and eyes wide open. He would see another sofa, but it was empty. He realized that there was a 4th being that had escaped from the crash. It had opened the door to the ship. Enrico continued scanning around the craft and noticed a pulsating orange light coming from the ceiling. Somehow, it seemed to mesmerize him, and Enrico became overwhelmed with anxiety, quickly leaving the craft. Once he stepped outside, he noticed the air was much easier to breathe. He felt dizzy, and after some time tried to start his car, but it wouldn't start up. After some time it did, and he drove into the town of General Acha. There, he would tell his friends the amazing story. His friends were skeptical, but after some convincing, Enrico was able to persuade them to go back to the crash site. There, as the men went to the spot, they saw a large pile of ash where the craft had been. The ash was still very warm. At that point, the men looked up in the sky and saw a craft identical to the one Enrico witnessed, hovering in the sky. It was quite high, being at least 1,000 feet off the ground. Above it, there was another craft just like it, and a bit higher up, there was another one. This one was much larger and cigar-shaped. The two smaller crafts would ascend. As this was occurring, the color of them changed from silver to red. They then entered the cigar-shaped object, and it quickly took off into the distance. The thought on what happened here follows. The being escaped from the downed craft and notified the large cigar ship, possibly the mothership. It came and picked up the remaining extraterrestrial and destroyed the damaged craft. There's generally two theories with this case. The first is that an extraterrestrial spacecraft somehow crashed. It's not uncommon for UFO crashes to occur, and there's evidence even with advanced technology this can occur. Just a few years earlier, the most famous UFO event in history occurred when a craft crashed in Roswell, New Mexico. Still, the appearance of the being raises questions from some and leads to the second theory. The second theory states that this was a hybrid, part human, part alien. The craft could have either been extraterrestrial or possibly part of a top-secret military experiment. This answers the question surrounding the being and its human-like characteristics. The 1940s and 50s was an exciting time in UFO culture, as many sightings were occurring, and even over populated areas. We saw events like the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942 and the Washington, D.C. UFO incident in 1952. This case does have one unique characteristic though. The crash was covered up by the aliens and not the government.